Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Jenna.
My name is Hannah, and today we have another music therapist, Leanna, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah, my name is Leanna. I've been working as a music therapist since 2016. I have both an undergrad and a master's degree in music therapy, and I'm currently working in sunny Phoenix, Arizona as a clinician and clinical training director at Neurologic Music Therapy Services of Arizona.
Awesome. So we're going to jump way back to the beginning, Leanna, of your very early stages of music therapy and how you found out about music therapy, how it sort of presented in your life, the process of applying to colleges, what kind of drew you in terms of schools and applications, things like that.
Yeah, so my learning initially about music therapy was very dramatic, and then the application process was very undramatic. So I was my senior year of high school, and if your parents were pushy like mine, they were probably like, what are you going to do with your life? You better decide right now and apply to a bunch of schools and do it. So I was in that senior year turmoil of kind of wanting to do physical therapy, kind of wanting to do psychology, kind of wanting to do something with music, and torn between all of those different avenues. And I was in choir class in high school, and it was senior year. And not only that, but I'd been in music lessons my whole life, forever and ever and ever. And so it was one of the rare days in choir class where it was very quiet, and we were taking a music theory test. And because it's public school choir music theory, it was pretty simple. I finished pretty quick, turned in my test. I'm just kind of hanging out. One of the students who had graduated a year or two ahead of me had come back to visit that day, visit our choir director. She was probably a sophomore at one of the universities in North Carolina, and I was totally eavesdropping on their conversation. And she was telling our choir director about this program at her school she was looking into called music therapy. And I was like, oh, this sounds like exactly what I want to do with my life. And this is probably October-ish. I'm guessing she was home on a fall break of sorts. So I was like, I have to go to the bathroom, and took all my stuff with me and got in the car and left school and went home and changed all my college applications around to music therapy. And my parents thought I was crazy. They begged me not to do it. They were like, you can take a gap year. You can do other things with your life. They're like, it's not going to be worth it. Please don't do this. You'll never have a job. I guess they thought it'd be if you get a performance degree, and it's really hard to actually make money unless you're very talented or have lots of connections. So I was fighting with them. We went on all these school tours. I ended up applying and getting accepted to Appalachian State University, where I did my undergrad in North Carolina. There was 3 universities in North Carolina that had music therapy degrees at the time. And so I just applied to all 3, toured all 3, and then decided App was the school for me. I got into the School of Music, and I got into the music therapy program because you have to interview verbally for the program. But I did not initially get into the School of Music because I had forgotten that my choir director had been putting me as an alto for many, many years to help the alto section because they needed help. And I had been working on other skills with her in my private lessons. So I auditioned for the School of Music as an alto and did not get in. And then my freshman year, first semester, I was like, okay, I'm going to take all these classes and just try and stay par of the course with music therapy and see if I can sneak in a semester late to the School of Music. And so I was doing some warm-ups with a classmate one day, and they were like, you are definitely a soprano. And I was like, oh yeah, I am a soprano. I'd forgotten after all these years. So then revamped my audition repertoire to be a soprano and got into the School of Music. So then continued on my undergrad music therapy journey from there. Something I did not know, and I don't know if you ladies have learned this through your your recordings here or not. Not all schools of music are audition based. I have learned this through my role as clinical training director, and my interns that come in tell me about their music experiences, and they're not all audition based. And it's very interesting because there is definitely a gap of like music knowledge between the audition-based schools and the non-audition-based schools. And it's just interesting that music therapy programs are available at both. So that's just something I've learned in the past like year and a half that I didn't know beforehand. So yeah, but that's how I got into it. I really loved my time at my undergrad. It was a good program in terms of it was very challenging. Something I didn't know going into undergrad that I wish I had known before. I was just like, quick, apply to all the schools, change your major to music therapy. Is that all the programs are also so different, just kind of based on who runs them. So the program I went to in undergrad was very GIM based, which is great if you are good at GIM. It's a little abstract for me. I kind of struggled with that. I really excelled in any of the neuro classes we took in undergrad. So when I went back and did my master's through Colorado State, I specifically sought out that school because it's like research and neuroscience based and really thrived in that type of environment. And that's how I work now in like an NMT based clinic. I just really love that clear path of like, this is what research says, how music impacts the brain, and this is how I'm going to help clients reach their goals through either maneuvering around damaged parts of the brain or stimulating damaged parts of the brain. It just is super fascinating to me, but that's how I got into it, at least in the beginning.
So thinking about your undergraduate experience and also your graduate experience, what did you really enjoy about the different aspects of each? And what was something that if you could do it again, you would do differently or would like to see grow in the future?
Yeah, I know music therapy programs are usually not gigantic, but my little cohort of classmates, we were just so tight in undergrad. And even in my master's program, it's just the way you get to interact with your colleagues and work together for kind of like the greater good of music therapy is just so inspiring to me. I really, really enjoyed that part of collegiate life for sure. Going back, it's hard to say because I wish I hadn't done like such a GIM based undergraduate program, knowing now that music therapy programs can fluctuate so much based on who runs them. But also like my classmates were so great and we're all like, a lot of us are still close today. A lot of them helped me with not only my first job, but now my second job, getting connections for those all across the United States, not even just like in North Carolina where we went to school. With my graduate program now, I still seek advice from a lot of my classmates. And then now some of my classmates are seeking out mentorship from me. So it's just this really good collaborative spirit, which I really loved. It's hard to say because it was GIM based and I wasn't very good at GIM. If I would have done a different undergraduate program, I don't know. North Carolina just doesn't have, it was the best program in the state of North Carolina for sure. So if I was going for like in-state tuition, that was the one for me. Because I think at the time it was Appalachian State, Eastern Carolina, and then Queen's University. And the Queen's University program may not exist anymore. And for a while, the East Carolina one was on the fringe of being cut too, but our program was always very solid. So I was grateful for that. It's hard to say. If I could go back and do it again, I may have gone to a different undergrad program. It would have cost more money, but it may have been more neuroscience based in how the rest of my career has gone. Same with internship. My internship was not very like neuroscience based. I kind of just went for the internship of, okay, this is the one that gives me free housing and a meal a day, and I'm gonna survive 6 months on like toast and peanut butter, you know? So it's hard because you have those like financial constraints, but you also want to grow as a clinician. So I honestly can't say 100% either way if I would change it or not. But if I were to change anything, it would be maybe finding a program more based in the NMT sector of music therapy. And then same with internship too. For my master's, I specifically sought it out for those reasons. And I'm just really grateful that I did. It was just an awesome, awesome program. Dr. Lagasse and their whole team at CSU are just really, really awesome clinicians and professors. So I just appreciate that they work actively in the field and teach and do research. Like they're just very up and current on best practice models. And it's just, they're just really inspiring to learn from.
So I know you said in terms of internship, it wasn't exactly what you were looking for or what you ended up being interested in at the end. What do you feel like knowing that was the most impactful thing you did learn in your internship as a clinician?
My internship was wild, and I reflect often on it now being the internship supervisor at my job, because I was constantly, so my internship basically, I did it at like a facility for older adults. So I worked with some like typically declining, aging older adults, some adults that have had like physical injuries, some adults with like strokes or TBIs. And then there was like twice a month, a group of adults with developmental delays and disabilities that we would go out and work with at another site. And I think the internship I was at used to be a huge program. And this is actually something I'm super passionate about now, is that the amount of internships for music therapy keep declining. I don't know if you guys have like noticed this or not, but it's hard to find internships that aren't going inactive or stopping. And I definitely see that at my old internship site. They used to have what they told me would be like 4 rotating interns. So they'd be like 2 senior interns and 2 junior interns, and they would like every 3 months rotate and the next ones would come in. By the time I got there, I was the only intern. So there's no 4, it was just me. And I had 4 supervisors, and they all wanted different things out of me. And they all had different backgrounds and credentials. Like one of them wasn't even a music therapist. They were like a registered music therapist, an RMT that had been like kind of grandfathered in from way back when. So that's how long they had been working and probably not like re-upping their education. And then one of them was an NMT, Sherry McElhatton. She was great. And then I had 2 other just like regular music therapists as well. And they all just wanted different styles out of me. And I just found myself session planning based on what supervisor was going to come and watch me that day, which was so stressful, especially if last minute they had to change and a different supervisor came to come and get me. I was like, no. So it was just a struggle. And then I found out a girl came to observe me at my first job at where I was working post internship. And she was interning there, and she told me that one of the supervisors had been laid off because they'd had all these budget cuts there. And it just seemed like it was all like a mess going on there. I just strive now as an internship supervisor to give consistency and to not get rising therapists so stuck in their session plans, because I spent so much time in my internship doing session plans. And I feel like in our undergrad, and we're always stuck in the session plans, and you spend so much time in it. And then if something doesn't go right in the session, you get in kind of that fight, flight, or freeze mode. You're like, what do? I have to deviate from the session plan. So I just try to teach my students as they come up just to be flexible with your plan. You know, you can think of a little plan ahead of time if you want, but more basing it off of what the client needs in the moment, and then going from there and using your tools to make those best decisions in the moment. And I wish I had learned more of that in my internship. I learned a lot of great skills. I think just a lot of things clicked for me at about internship point. Like growing up, piano was my first ever instrument. I had played ukulele. I was a vocal primary. But playing guitar was like the death of me in undergrad. I used to be so bad at guitar. And then somehow right before the end of undergrad and the start of internship, things just kind of clicked for me. And I went into internship like, and they were like, wow, you are like our most proficient guitar player coming in. I was like, oh, I know, I'm so good. But that was not the case in undergrad at all. I really struggled. Shout out to Dr. Least at Appalachian State for bearing through all my horrible guitar exams. Yeah, I just wish I had been encouraged more to like think as an intern on how to best solve things in the moment versus just write this session plan, do what I tell you to. Oh no, a different supervisor's coming. You didn't do what I told you to. Why not? And it's just kind of like, it was a tricky balance. I learned a lot. It was a great experience. And with free housing and a meal a day, I was like super grateful just to like be able to kind of financially get through that time also. But it was definitely like a wake-up call that I was like, I don't want to work in this type of setting forever. So, which is great because it's only 6 months. My internship also, because it wasn't an older adults type of facility, we coordinated a lot with like rec therapists, and a lot of times would often carry the load of some rec therapist ideas, like just doing like regular games and stuff that weren't music therapy involved, which was fine. But again, it's like not why I'm there. It's not what I'm there to learn. So, and again, it's hard because it's like, would I have changed stuff, my internship site, knowing all this? Maybe, if I could have found another internship site with free housing and a meal a day, you know? So it's just like, it's a tough balance. But I definitely take those ideals in with me as I supervise my students now to try and just encourage them to think and follow what science tells them to do and not just do what I want them to do, because I'm not always going to be standing over their shoulder their whole career unless they come work for us, and then I am. So
how do you feel like you were able to develop your own sort of theoretical orientation or own way of practicing with then being supervised by a variety of different people and doing kind of what they were expecting?
I didn't really feel like I was able to do that in that setting.
Yeah.
I honestly, and again, going back with like my great cohort of classmates, I had a few other classmates in that type of setting and a few other classmates that we had done that type of setting in our like practicums and clinicals in undergrad. And I remember just, communicating with them and talking with them and reminiscing about things we did and being like, oh yeah, I really liked that. I'm going to like bring that back, and just trying to go from there. I feel like I was able to bring a little more of not the next generation, but a little more of a different music repertoire in, just because I feel like when you work in that setting for so long, you're like, You Are My Sunshine is the #1 top hit and stuff like that. But, and I mean this in the nicest non-morbid way, but like, old people die. Less old people come into the facility. They're not going to want the music of the people that just passed away. So I felt like I did a good job of rejuvenating kind of the music there in terms of age appropriate music for the clients that were there. And I think in that way, just working on my music skills on my own time kind of helped me develop as a therapist, just to see like, yeah, like music is impactful, but it's got to be like the right type of music for what the client needs. And that really helped me grow, maybe not theoretically as a clinician in my internship, but at least like musically as an intern. I did really enjoy Sherry McElhatton showed me some like bilateral drumming and a few things she did with one of her private clients that were kind of more NMT based towards the very end of my internship. I wish she had shown me earlier, and I was just kind of like, fascinating. And that kind of really sparked my interest of where to go next in life. So I thought that was cool. But I never got to work with that client personally. She just let me like shadow her for her own private client, not even related to our internship. She was just so great. She was just very like, I'm going to try and help you go where you want to go, which I really appreciated.
Yeah. Kind of towards the end of internship, kind of approaching the CBMT exam, what was your experience like taking the exam, studying for it? Any tips or tricks that you use with your own interns and students as they kind of prepare for it as well?
Yeah, someone had told me, which I thought was great advice. It was at least great advice for me at the time. I feel like the exam has evolved a little bit since I took it in end of 2015, early 2016. I think it was early 2016, which kind of dates me a little bit. But they told me to review like kind of my intro to music therapy textbook, just to get a broad perspective on the different populations music therapy can be used with. And then they just were like, review your music theory skills, review your blues and your Dorian and Mixolydian scales and all those things that you don't use super often, or that you might use, but you don't always know the name of. And then they said, if there's any populations you haven't worked with in a while, definitely review those. Like I didn't have a lot of mental health clients in my internship, so I definitely went back and reviewed those. And that really helped me. I remember taking the exam and being like, I passed with flying colors. And I got my paper back and it was like, you passed by like 5 points. And I was like, oh, so not by flying colors, but I did it. So I just like, and a lot of my interns have told me the same thing. They were like, yeah, I thought I like aced that thing and I got it back and I only passed by a couple of points. And I was like, well, a pass is a pass. So you did it. But it is interesting how you get that kind of false sense of confidence. You're like, I'm a working professional now. And then you take the test and it kind of knocks you back down. I'd be interested. I don't know, honestly, if the exam has evolved to have any like teletherapy questions on there now or anything like that, post-COVID, or any more like sanitization protocols or anything like that. It would be interesting to see. Every time I have an intern take the exam, I just try and get a little more feedback from them. I took the practice exam. I believe that's on CBMT's website, the one you pay for. It was great, good practice, I think, just to also think about like, oh, I didn't think about that population or that type of question. Even if you know the answer to that one, there could be different questions related to that topic that you might want to go review. I will say I made the mistake. I bought the practice exam, took it, and then I was like, I want to do more because it said there that you could take it a few times, but I guess they meant on your own paper. So I went online, bought it again to do it again. And it was the same exam. And I was like, I just paid twice for the same practice exam. So don't do that. That was a mistake I just misread the text underneath, I think, but that was helpful. So I would say, yeah, practice exam, review your intro book, review any populations you didn't work with in your internship. And then, also just basic music theory skills and all of the fun names with the music theory skills involved there. I will say there are other practice exams that my interns have brought to me. They're like, hey, I found this free one online. Hi, Kat. Ladybird, get out of here. And they will come and bring them to me, and the questions on them are really odd. And I don't think a lot of thought was put into them, as they're just kind of free floating out on the internet. And I've had several of them brought to me. I can't think of the websites off the top of my head, but I would just say don't bother with those because they didn't seem very beneficial. And if anything, they made my interns more nervous because they would ask really odd questions that I just had never encountered before. And that after they took the exam told me, yeah, nothing like that was on my exam. So, Ladybird, get out of here.
So I know you've talked quite a bit about supervision style for yourself. Can you talk a little bit more about what works for you as a supervisor and like what traits you really try to bring with you when you're supervising your interns?
I really try to be supportive because I feel like all my supervisors at internship were like, that is wrong. That is wrong. That is good. That is wrong. Like, and there was no black, it was very black and white. There was no gray in the middle. And I feel like that gray area is really important to develop your thinking into determining what is right and wrong. So I just try, and I know everyone learns different ways. So that's the first thing is I always ask my interns, how do you learn? What is your learning style? And I'm a learner by doing. So I think I just kind of take that and I try to have them learn by doing. So I'm like, okay, you were here. This was good, but it could be better. Let's like workshop ways to make it even better. And that's the style I go for. And most of my interns have been grateful for that. So I just will keep on with that. But I try to like encourage, but also not like, give them false confidence of like, that was great if it wasn't. And it depends on the intern too. Some of my interns have been relatively like independent, pick things up really quick. And I'm like, okay, yeah, great. You do your thing. I'm going to let you go with it. And if you need help, come find me because you got it. And some of them need to be a little more spoon-fed and get a little more like assistance in. Like I had an intern that was like, yeah, I just don't know when to turn in this project. And I'm like, well, during your internship, because it's your internship project. And they're like, well, can we set a due date? And I'm like, you can set your own due date because it's your job. So just stuff like that just kind of baffles me sometimes. But yeah, just the learning by doing, I really try to get in, especially with the music skills. I really try and help them hone in what's important, what's not important, because I feel like so much in music therapy, we try to make it look really elaborate and sound really elaborate with our music. And if you're not having that strong rhythmic input that the client needs, because you're doing this beautiful rubato that's in like the original song, it's not really going to help them, you know? So just always relating it back to like the why is the music involved, and then having them tell me why the music is involved, and then having them do the intervention or the exercise with me to get that practice, just because practice makes perfect. So I think anytime I can get them to practice, especially if they get a chance to practice just with me without the risk of like messing up in front of a client, I just think that's super beneficial, because I did not get that with my internship. I didn't get time to like practice things with my supervisors. They would just have me write the session plan, and then I would write it, and then I would send it to them, and they would read through it and tell me if they thought it was good or not in writing. But things can look very different in writing and play out very different, like physically. So I've tried to focus less on the writing time of session plans for my interns and more on like the physical practicing of exercises and interventions with my interns. Because like you write enough papers in school, like this is the real world. And like the amount of time I spend on SOAP notes and treatment plans versus like implementing clinical skills is a much better balance than in school when you're doing like this much papers and this much clinical skills, you know, because that's what internship is for. You come in from your undergrad or master's or whatever equivalency, and you have maybe like 100, 200 clinical hours, and you need to get the rest of the 1,200 in that time. So that's what they're there for. And I think so often people forget that's why they're there, is to be actively involved in the clinical skills, not write me a session plan and then in 3 weeks you can do it and good luck and I'll tell you if it's good or not at the end, you know?
Yeah. When it comes to writing notes, I'm curious what your kind of practice is in terms of supervising interns and helping them formulate, you know, how to write a session note. Maybe not as necessarily a session plan, but in terms of recording what happened in the session, what is sort of your way of going about sort of shaping that experience?
Yeah. So our clinic just recently, actually, probably a year or two ago, switched. We had been doing a different type of documentation system, and we switched to doing SOAP notes. So, and which again, just to like spotlight the discrepancies in music therapy programs out there, I did SOAP notes in my undergrad, but because it's so focused on your writing in your undergrad, they were like page-long SOAP notes. They were so long. It was like a huge paragraph for each section, and that's not feasible in your clinical time. So it was like taking my skills I learned from that and then just paring them down to be shorter and more concise. And that's what I tell my interns too. But a lot of my interns, they come in and they've never heard of SOAP notes. Like they didn't do them in their undergrad. So it's just interesting hearing the different documentation methods they had people do in their programs. So I just kind of, if they need explaining on what a SOAP note is, I tell them what it is, and then I'll show them some examples from my clients. And then for the first few times they do it, I'll write one still, and then I'll have them write one. And then we'll kind of compare them side by side and be like, okay, what's missing in yours, but I have in mine? What might be missing in mine and you have in yours? Like I could have forgotten something. And then just helping them look further past the surface. Like a lot of my interns will be like, completed drumming with the client. And I'm like, why were you drumming with the client? Like if any person like is trying to potentially be a funding source for you, sees that you did some drumming, they're like, well, I could put anyone in there to drum with a client. Like, why does it have to be a music therapist that's trained for this? So I always try to encourage them to see it with that eye when they document. And then I also try to encourage them that it's not a huge long novel that they need either. It's very clinical, it's very short. And if it's too long and too wordy, people like social workers, family members, they're not going to read it, which is really sad, but true. So just short, concise, to the point. If they need an explanation on what a SOAP note is, I explain it to them. And then I also explain, like, you know, like nurses and other medical professionals use these. This is not just something I made up for fun for interns to do. And then we'll kind of do side-by-side notes for a few weeks. And then towards the end, when they are more independent and they've got it down, I'm like, all right, you do the data for so-and-so today and send it to me when you're done. and then they send it to me. And if it looks good, I document it. And if it doesn't look good, then I, problem solve with them. But usually by the end of internship, they've got it down pretty good, which is really cool to see their writing skills develop in such a fast amount of time, especially with like 2 or 4 years of training and potentially other ways of writing to 6 months of this new way of writing. I feel like they always pick it up really quick, which is amazing to me. So I'm grateful for that.
Can you talk about continuing education, what you find really helpful, if that's different trainings that you go and seek out, if it's going to conferences, if it's taking classes, going back to grad school, what really has worked best for you and helped you grow as a professional?
I really benefited from going back to grad school because I wanted that like research, neuroscience-based type of environment that I didn't get in my undergrad. So that really was beneficial for me. And then that also took care of my like continuing ed credits for like 5 years because their grad school credits are worth a lot, as they should be, because they're expensive and time consuming. A lot of my continuing ed stuff comes from my own supervising of interns and stuff like that. I get a lot of credits through that. I'm actually like so grateful that CBMT, if you listen to this, anyone on CBMT, don't think too much about it, but I'm so grateful they never audit me, because honestly, every 5-year cycle comes up and I have like over 1,000 credits that I'm always just putting in there. Like I'm always swimming in them. And so I do a lot of like my own supervision. I get weekly supervision at my job from our director, Suzanne Oliver, which is also great and another great way to get credit. We have partnered with some of the schools in the area that make us take some ethics courses every year that are free. So then I get my like those 3 ethics courses that somehow people struggle to get all the time. So that one's always good for me. With the Neurologic music therapy community, they're just starting to roll out some more continuing ed stuff with them. Like they're doing some online symposiums, and I've also just started helping supervising in some of the like NMT trainings that they're doing. And that has been fun to go down that kind of avenue for continuing ed, just because it relates more to my work. I'm not against like going to conferences and doing other stuff like that, but I felt like a lot of times I would just pay a lot of money to drive or fly really far to go to this conference and just learn like not a lot that applies to my work, which sounds like it was a lot that applied to other people's work. And it was really interesting to hear this stuff. And I've presented at conference with my classmates and stuff like that before. Like I'm all about music therapy community and it's great, but it's just so vague and anything goes kind of in that scenario. And the fact that now with it being online, there's like more options, I think, for recordings to go back and listen to stuff. But like, there's 3 sessions happening at once and you have to pick one, but like, which one do you go to? It just is very, it was like overwhelming and underwhelming all at the same time to me, because I'd be like, oh, I really want to go to this. And then they would just be getting to like the meat of what I wanted to learn about. And they'd be like, and your hour's up. We're all done now. So I was like, what? So I just haven't done the conference thing in a while. Again, I'm not against it. And for some people, it's really great and beneficial. And I've been there, I've presented there. It's good for some, but it's just a lot of money. I think the music therapy community is kind of starting to realize this, like the whole AMTA demise a while back and all of that like we're paying a lot of money for not a lot of info, or like you have this AMTA membership and they send you journal articles and maybe only one article in the whole book applies to what you're doing in your current work, So I think we just need ways to streamline that type of continuing ed as a whole music therapy community. But for now, through like the NMT Academy and their new evolving methods of continuing ed, plus my own supervisions I get and receive, I just really am always swimming in credits, gratefully and thankfully, because I know sometimes people struggle to get those before their 5-year cycle is up. Did that answer your question? I feel like that was a little off topic. Okay.
Good. Can you talk about job searching and what that has been like for you? I know you mentioned earlier about feeling grateful for having that connection from your cohort and how that really helped you out. Can you talk a little bit more specifically about what were you looking for when you look for jobs? What are like your non-negotiables about, I really need this in a workplace. This is what I want to feel when I'm interviewing or when I'm visiting a place for the first time. This is what I need to see.
Yeah. So I was just super blessed in my job hunt that in both of my job hunts, I had people from my undergrad reach out to me and be like, hey, we're hiring where I work and I think it's great here. And I think you would think it's great here. You should apply and I will put in a good word for you. My first job I ever took, which I will always be so grateful for, because I feel like breaking in with your first job is always so tough, was at a private practice in La Crosse, Wisconsin called West Salem, Wisconsin. I lived in La Crosse. It was called Life in Harmony. And I was doing my internship more near the Milwaukee side of Wisconsin. And then I had a classmate who had done her internship in Minneapolis. And keep in mind, we're all from North Carolina, like way warmer in the South than where we are in the Midwest there. So I think our little radars were going off and we're like, oh, we have friends in the area. And she had recently taken a job at the Life in Harmony clinic and saw I was interning in Wisconsin. And she was like, hey, I don't know if you plan on staying here or not because it's cold, but if you are, we are hiring and I think you would really enjoy it here. And I was like, okay. And I kind of put it off for a while because at the time, my now husband and we were engaged and I had dragged him with me to Wisconsin so that he could do his job search there while I did my internship. And I was like, well, I would want to see if he ends up with the job because, we both are getting married in a year and we got to, be in the same place. And he ended up through all these series of interviews. Then he ended up not getting any of those jobs he was going for at the time. And so I was like, okay, it's on me. I'm going to go apply for this job and see what it is. And they were just really just like, and I hate the term that always people say like the vibe, but it really like the vibe was good. Like I went in and everyone was just so friendly and welcoming. And the interview questions I felt were very logical and approachable. And they asked me to do some sight reading, which I appreciated, like looking into like musicianship skills and all of that. Cause I feel like sometimes in interviews for music therapy, we don't always look into that. And then afterwards, I went to go grab a bite to eat with the CEO of the company. And she was just telling me how she started it. And then she just kind of looks across the table and she was like, I think you'll be a good fit on our team. And then just keeps eating. And I was like, did I get offered a job? So I'm just like, then I'm like frozen, like, should I keep eating this sandwich? I don't know. And so then I didn't hear from her for like a week. And I was like, I'm pretty sure she offered me a job, but maybe I was imagining it. And then I got the offer letter in my email and I was like, oh, thank goodness. But I just really, as a young professional who was like getting ready to get married, I was like, I need a job that will pay me enough to survive and also potentially my husband. And I need health insurance and I don't have a big collection of instruments. I need a job that's going to provide me with musical instruments that I can use. And I just want a job where I'm going to get supervision and grow in it. So I got all of those things through my job at Life in Harmony. And it was just so great. It was everything I could ask for and more. Like all my coworkers were so supportive. Oh, sorry. My son just woke up. My husband's getting him some bottle. But I just wanted a job where I was going to be nurtured and help grow as a therapist. And that really was everything I could have asked for. I was hired as a part-time associate or a part-time clinician. And then I was supposed to step in and cover for a therapist when she went on maternity leave and be full-time. And then once she returned from maternity leave, then it would be evaluated if my caseload would then go back to part-time or if I'd stay full-time. Thankfully, I covered the maternity leave, went to full-time, and then was able to stay full-time thereon after. And then actually became one of the more like senior employees towards the end of my time there. And it was a good balance. I really also enjoyed, I knew I wanted to work in more of like an NMT based setting after doing my internship and being like, I want something that's more like research and logic based. And that was an NMT based clinic. So then our boss was like, okay, you have to go get the NMT training, which was really cool to learn about. And then it was just, I wanted to work with a bunch of different populations because in my internship, it was like older adults all the time, a lot, which was great. but I just wanted to get an experience with as much as I could because I wasn't sure if my husband did ever end up with a job in the future, like, and we moved to a different place, like what populations I'd be working with. I was just hoping to get some experience with some of them. And so I grew to love the private practice setting, and that you work with so many different diagnoses, and some, are the more common, like autism, Down syndrome, Alzheimer's, and then some more like less common ones like vanishing white matter disorder and stuff like that. So it's just like, or NKH, and so it's just very interesting to get that experience. And I was just really, really grateful I felt like I was getting paid to like grow as a professional and not just getting paid to like work. And that was really just like rewarding for me. And I really, really enjoyed my time there. The only reason I left that job was because then my husband did end up getting a job here in Phoenix. So then we moved to Phoenix, Arizona. And right at that time, I had, again, some classmates from my undergrad. They're so cute. Their names are Ellie and Zeke, and they met in our undergrad program and then got married, and they're like a little music therapy power couple. But the guy, Zeke, was leaving a position at this private practice to go work at Phoenix Children's Hospital. So he saw we were moving to the area and like wrote to me, and he was like, you should apply for this job. Like, I will put in a good word for you. I think you would fit in well. And I was like, wow, deja vu from the first job. So that's just exactly what ended up happening. And so it's the same type of setting as I was in Wisconsin. There are like a few pros and cons between the jobs. Like our job now in Phoenix, we're all clinic or teletherapy based. So I'm not driving around to people's homes in like -10-degree weather like I was in Wisconsin sometimes. I think I had a better health insurance plan through the Life and Harmony job, but I have health insurance with this job, which is, great. My hours here are more conducive. It's more like a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 4, depending on the day, which is great because, daycare closes at 6. So when you have a kid, you can't be working till like 7 o'clock at night as a therapist, unless your spouse is like right there on it. And again, it was the same, still looking for someone that had instruments I could use because I own, a few, but no one tells you in your undergrad to go out and buy all the instruments you can at Goodwill in case you start your own like private practice. You know what I mean? So I'm just super grateful that all the things I needed to overlap from one job to the other did. And then all the things I needed to change from one job to another did. And I just really love working in the private practice setting, and just getting that different experience where every day is a little bit the same and a little bit different depending on the client and the diagnosis you're working with. Is it a one-to-one? Is it a group setting? It's just a good variety, in my opinion, like a healthy variety, instead of going back to like internship, doing like you are my sunshine for like the 10th time that day. And you're like, this is not very healthy for me. For them, it's great. But for me, it's like, I'm kind of over this. So
can you talk a little bit about your self-care and protecting yourself from burnout? What do you do outside of work so that you're still enjoying music and your life to the fullest, because we give so much in our work every day?
Yeah. So this is not ever something I expected to really get into until I was like an adult. And now like looking back, I'm like, oh, I wish I had done this as a kid too. But when we moved to Wisconsin originally and I took my job, basically, so my husband works as a youth pastor, and he had been doing the job hunt thing while I was doing my job. And at my first job in Wisconsin, we drove from house to house a lot of the times doing in-home therapy services. And I remember driving past a sign of a church, and it was like, coming soon, Cooley Life Church. And it was like a new church coming to the area, and it had a phone number. And I was like, I wonder if they need a youth pastor, because me being like, I have a job. If my husband could get a job here, we'd be set. So then I called the church and I was like, are you looking for a youth pastor? And they were like, well, maybe. How about you guys come check us out? So we got involved with this church plant there, and I ended up getting involved with the worship band there, and really just kind of found that was just great self-care for me. It was just really fun to like play music for fun with like a group of people in like a non-therapeutic manner, which is so funny because I never in undergrad or college was ever like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go jam out with my friends now and do like a fun music playtime. Like that was just never how it was for me. I think in undergrad, I was also just so stressed about learning guitar because I sucked at it so bad that didn't seem fun to me to go play guitar for fun. I was like, who does that? But I got involved with the worship stuff there, and I was like, oh yeah, this is really fun. I really enjoy this. And that really helped with my self-care for sure. So when we moved to Phoenix, I got nervous when my husband got hired because he got hired at kind of like a bigger church. And I was like, I don't know if they're going to need anyone to help with that stuff. I don't know if they're going to want me to help with that stuff. Are they even going to think I'm talented enough to help with that stuff? Or I don't want them to let me help just because I'm like one of the pastor's wives. Like that's kind of sad. So I was a little more timid about getting involved with that stuff. But after we were here for a few months, I was able to kind of jump back into that scene and was like, oh yeah, this is for me. It really just, it's just a lot of fun. It was a little stressful at the start of COVID at times because numbers were down and it was hard to get people to coordinate to rehearse in like a safe way. So that was kind of a little less self-care-esque during that time. But for the most part, it's been very, very rewarding. I also teach a few just private like piano and guitar voice lessons on the side. Because I think it's just important as a music therapist to work with like neurotypical kids as well as like non-neurotypical kids, just to kind of see the parallels and the differences in their development. And that's been really rewarding for me too, just because the kids are just so quirky and fun. And it's just very low stress for me. Like I show up and it's like, did they practice? Awesome. Did they not practice? No skin off my shoulder. Like and then we just kind of play music for fun, and getting to show kids how to enjoy music for fun has also helped me remember how to enjoy music for fun. I guess in non-music ways, although like I try to listen to good playlists and stuff while I do this, is running. I really got into running. I've done one full marathon and several half marathons. I played really competitive soccer growing up, and then I got to undergrad and that all stopped, and I was feeling kind of restless and having trouble sleeping, but I wasn't feeling like stressed about anything. So I was just confused. And I can't remember if it was my mom or my dad or an uncle or one of my relatives looked up that the average soccer player runs like 9 miles a game or something ridiculous over the course of the game. And they're like, maybe you should try running. And I was like, that sounds kind of boring, but I'll give it a go. And then I started it and I was like, oh yeah, this is for me. Like it was just made me feel so much better. So between the running and then the playing on like worship bands and stuff at church for fun, and then my own private piano guitar lessons that I do on the side have really kind of helped me with my self-care. If I really get a lot of time, I like to like bake and cook, but those time for that is scarce these days. But when I do get the opportunities to do those things, I really enjoy those as well. And again, putting on while running or cooking a good playlist in the background makes it even better for sure.
Yeah. I know we talked a lot about sort of past experiences, but now kind of looking towards the future. Where do you think the profession of music therapy is going in the future? Where would you like to see it go? Where do you think it could grow?
That's a great question. And I even read that before this interview and was like, I'm going to think about this one. And then I didn't. But I think honestly, like it's hard. I think music therapy to be taken seriously, that we kind of need to specialize. Like, we have like the Nordhoff Robbins and the GIM and the NMT and stuff like that. And I just think if we're going to be taken seriously as a profession, we all need to kind of pursue specialized trainings beyond just like general music therapy. The end. I have my degree now, just because I feel like that's really how I've grown as a clinician versus an undergrad. You'd play a song and you'd let the kid fill in the blank singing, and the parent's like, oh my gosh, they spoke. That's so great. And you're like, yeah. But then you never really are explained why that happens. Like the teachers just tell you to do it and then you do it. And I think knowing the why behind what we do is so important. And I think the specialized trainings are important for that. And I think that's part of the reason why AMTA is just kind of like crumbling right now and scrambling to restructure, because they're just vague. It's about all of music therapy, but not all of music therapy is the same. So there are lots of parts that are the same, but I think in the future, we need to do more specialization and more research into the why we are effective versus just the music helps you. Yeah. And then that's just kind of where I feel like a lot of it is left. And I just hope that ways to get access to research when you're not a student is more streamlined for the specializations that you're a part of. And yeah, I guess that's just what I'm hoping for is not, I don't want to like segregate music therapy, but I do want us to just be more decisive in what we want in terms of like furthering ourselves as professionals and getting research and education that tailors to that specifically instead of just reading a random journal article about a population that I'm never going to work with and be like, well, that was fun, you know? So that's just what I hope going forward in the future, that it's more succinct, I guess. Succinct, but separated out also in a way.
I think that is all of our questions. Jenna, do you have any other ones?
That was all. Do you have any that you would like to add in, Leanna? Anything that we didn't ask you today?
Ooh, good question. No, I think these were really great structured questions that you guys had. And I think they're just important things to think about because I feel like a lot of times, I know at least from my personal experience, I learned what music therapy was and I was like, I'm going to do it, and just kind of went headfirst into it without any research as to like the different types of it or what school would be best to go to or anything like that. It was just kind of going for like what I could get access to the fastest and the most convenient manner. And I think that's just so important for like people considering music therapy to think about. But no, I think these were really, really thoughtful questions that you guys found for sure. Have you guys learned a lot through this interview process? Speaking with people? Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody is very unique in everything that they share, which is awesome hearing everyone's stories.
There is not like a whole lot of music therapy podcasts out there. And I didn't know this. Where I work, we have this thing called Visiting International Clinician. It's like a title, and we'll have people come either work with us for like a 4 to 6 month period just to get like supervision from Suzanne and from our team and work with clients, or we'll have people come for like 1 to 3 week periods just to like observe and gather information quick, and then they go back and apply it to their work. And one of the people that was visiting clinicians with us, his name was Joe Thompson, and he has a music therapy podcast called Baselines. Yeah, I see you guys nodding. And I got to be on his podcast for just talking about my childhood. I had at the time, it was called sensory integration dysfunction, and now I think it's just called sensory processing disorder. So I just got to talk about like my experiences growing up and my sensory needs that, like, you know, as a kid, you're like, this is normal. But as an adult, you look back and you're like, no, it wasn't. And just like my process in getting like different types of therapy and how I could have done all that through music therapy. But I was not aware until Joe asked me to be on his podcast that A, music therapy podcasts exist, and that B, there's not that many, and it's kind of a need for our field. So I'm so excited that you guys are doing that. That would be fun if you ever got to collaborate with Joe in the future on some podcast stuff. He's really great about that. He did a whole series about our staff and his time here in the US because he lives in Australia and came to work with us for several months. So we interviewed like our office manager and me and our director and a few other staff members. But it'd be fun if you guys ever got to cross paths. I'm sure he would be like all about it.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you again, also, Leanna, for agreeing to interview with us. It's awesome to hear about everyone's different perspectives, and especially because we're from the East Coast. So, so talking to people on the West Coast and learning about everyone's work and throughout the country is really, really cool.
Yeah. I remember looking into, I don't remember if it's Radford had a program, or I just remember vaguely like looking into some music therapy stuff in Virginia before deciding to stay in North Carolina. But I'm glad that it's like flourishing a little bit there, because I know in North Carolina, it's really kind of hard for them to gain any traction, unfortunately. So I'm glad that it's going well in Virginia, one for the East Coasters. So that's great. I love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And hopefully we'll be able to talk again soon.
Yeah, keep me posted on where this ends up. I'd love to listen to the other interviews. Best of luck if you aren't wrapping up your series now and you have more to go. But thank you for doing this. This is like, I think, just super important for our field in general, and for future possible clinicians as well. I would love to like let my incoming interns like listen to a few of these and just like have people talk about what they would have done different in the beginning, just because they are kind of at the start of their own careers. I think it would be fun to let them kind of be like, oh yeah, maybe I should look into that.